Okay, Messerschmitt 110G, making some progress. Done a fair bit of spraying, as you can see. So I used, in the end, I didn't, because the standard colour scheme declares is RLM 76, which is a sky blue grey. Apparently towards the end of the war, with different manufacturers, it began to fade and become a bit whitish. So in the end, I didn't use Vallejo's RLM 76. I used their pale grey blue, which I thought
Bit closer.
was probably a slightly better match, a little bit paler, a little bit greyer. So I used that, and the same. There are various schemes. There's an overall this pale grey blue colour, and then various different schemes for the top surface, darkened. That calls for RLM 75, a grey. Again, I think that would have faded a bit, so I used a lighter grey, Vallejo neutral grey. I won't be able to see that terribly well. Anyway, so that's the aircraft. And I'm doing that scheme. There was a choice of about 4 schemes. Eduard, their presentation is good, their box art is good. They put a lot into it. They give you good schemes, they give you a history of each individual aircraft, choice of, 4 schemes. But I've also got quite an extensive reference books on Luftwaffe camouflage, which gets very complex, especially towards the end of the war. I think there were a lot of field applied schemes, temporary schemes, as and when. And I think as manufacture and supply became more difficult towards the end of the war, colour schemes shifted and changed and became more rudimentary some of the time. So I wasn't entirely sure. I wasn't convinced by all the schemes. This one, they've displayed it, as you can see, as a model. And reading through my references, the model scheme was common on Messerschmitt 110s, Junkers 88's slightly different schemes. In the instructions, it says that the upper surface consisted of 76 on the bottom and side, that's the overall blue-grey, with a darker grey colour also visible, which implies the top surfaces. Then it said there was an irregular lightened snake pattern of the RLM 76, the blue-grey, which lightened this whole thing. That's not what they show. They show a model. So I wasn't entirely clear. It's not entirely clear. So in the end, I went for a model because that sounded as if, from my references, that would be more standard, whatever standard meant in those terms. So yeah, there we are. That's that. There were oddities I found. I've also got an earlier kit for an earlier day fighter, as used during the Battle of Britain. It's the same kit. This one comes with additions, different added sprues, but it's the same kit. So that might account for some of the anomalies. I also wonder if they studied existing Messerschmitt 110s. I don't know how many there are still around. The RAF Museum has one. Cosworth, I think, possibly now, I'm not sure. But I wonder if that meant they also incorporated some anomalous details. One example, I've got the canopy taped up. I'm aiming to get that. I'm going to display it open if possible. So I'll be able to show you better. But the gunner radio operator's seat here, he would also have operated the radar sets. So the guns and the Schräger Musik, which I demonstrated earlier, he would have to service those, the rear guns for defence if necessary, but he would have to turn to face the rear. But the radar and radio is he has to face forward. The seat they supplied, there seemed to be some double seat without a back to it on a fixed rigid mounting, which seemed unlikely. The kit actually supplied, I guess for the earlier version in Eduard's understanding, of a swivelling seat. So I actually installed that because it seemed far more likely to me. Equally, behind the pilot seats on many aircraft during the war had armour plate behind them, all kinds of bombers, fighters, all of them. This one probably did, but the way it was supplied, it didn't supply a head armour, which seems unlikely. So I made some head armour and stuck it in with a headrest pad, just to add to that. The other thing that is difficult, I've mentioned before, a remarkably high parts count on Eduard, which gives it a feeling of quality. The more parts you've got, the better it seems. Not always the case. There were quite a few gaps I had to fill, which is a bit laborious, because I sort of found myself filling, sanding, refilling, sanding again. Complicated. Let me show you the radar array is going to be complicated. The one for this particular version comes in 4 parts. I don't know if you can see, they're still on the sprue. If those are visible. So I've got to glue 4 of these L-shaped things onto the front at 45 degrees to each other. There's a picture, where is it, which you might be able to see. It's that one. So there's an entire sort of toasting fork arrangement stuck out the front.
Blimey.
Must have reduced speed quite a bit with the drag. And what struck me as quite odd is that the nose section, in the instructions it shows you it's got markings where you're supposed to stick these. I couldn't find those. Maybe I sanded them off, I don't know, but I couldn't find them. And
can you hold that with tweezers so that it doesn't focus on your hands rather than the
all right.
piece?
And from the looks of it, they expect you to glue it on, putting a spot of glue on that tiny bit on the end. So you do this tiny, tiny attachment stuck with a 1/4 of a square millimetre of glue, which is going to be so fragile if you got it on successfully. So I decided, in the end, I drilled 4 holes at the right sort of angle, 45 degrees or so. Are they 45? They're all, yeah, they're at 90 degrees to each other, that's right. And I used some very fine brass rod I bought at a model shop in, Newark. Last year, the year before?
Oh, the year before.
And I put that through, crossed it over in the middle, and used pliers to flatten it, which is what you see sticking out here. So instead of a tiny point of contact, these will have a flattened brass plate to glue them to, which will make them a bit more sturdy. It's still going to be rather fragile, and I've still got to stick tiny cross members on here. I won't take them out because they won't even be visible. So it's going to be pretty fragile, so I'm going to have to do an awful lot before I get to that. I've done the rudders white, which the instructions for this scheme call for. There are markings on that. So the next stage, I've done the mottling, quite like that. I think that's the first time I've managed to do spray modelling for a German aircraft, I think. I can't remember doing another one with a sprayer. I'm quite pleased with that. I mean, they were quite random. There was no standard pattern, so I've done it pretty randomly. So the next stage is to apply the transfers. They put a satin coat over the top of that to get the transfers decals to fit properly. That'll be the next stage. There's a whole set of national markings. The pilot was a particularly high scoring, so he had kill markings and an iron cross marking on the fin and rudder. And there'll be a lot of small stencils to apply to fuel filling caps, that kind of thing. What comes after that? After that, I'll probably do a matte coat, because these would have been semi-matte, I think. German finishes, they tended to be slightly polished, which the RAF discovered round about the Battle of Britain, as far as I can recall, which gave them slightly more speed. The RAF began to copy this. I've got a feeling they use Fuller's Earth to polish the finish. It makes the aircraft slightly faster because the paint, the air friction is less. So I've got to work that one out. Transfers. Then I'm going to finish the cockpit cover. I've got them all taped on at the moment, so with masking. So I'll have to take that off, remove the loose pieces, and probably I'll have to hand paint. I think I'll have to think that one out. Hand paint the frames properly after that, and I feel it's going quite well. There's one of the spinners. The spinners were apparently mottled as well. By this stage of the war, late 44, I think, when they were parked on the ground, they were vulnerable to Allied ground attack aircraft doing sweeps over Luftwaffe airfields when they found them and shooting up anything they could find. Very dangerous, because they were usually surrounded by anti-aircraft. High rates of fire, 20mm, 88 cannon, the rest of it. So they would do one sweep, but there was a greater interest in camouflaging them on the ground. This camouflage was found to be better. They started off, as any of us might think, if you're going to fly at night, paint it black. Except the night sky isn't that black. If you're looking down, the ground is darkish. If you're looking up, it's not actually black, which is where this much paler colour came in. The top surface is darkened. The RAF gradually followed a similar sort of scheme, a light grey overall with dark green camouflage patterning over the top, which was more effective than black, strangely enough. So
I'm just looking at the instructions and thinking how easy they are.
Yes.
I thought that out later.
Yeah. I mean, you can see there's alternative radar arrays, but you can see the amount of extra construction necessary. Just baffling. I've got a Tamiya Heinkel 219 Uhu to build. That also a night fighter, a dedicated night fighter. It's got a similar radar array, but on the Tamiya kit, because Tamiya are good engineers at this, they supply you with an X-shaped frame in one piece. You clip that off, you attach that into the nose, and it's there. It doesn't rely on tiny little attachment pieces like this, which is baffling. So I'm every so often I find myself thinking, and really start struggling with it. The amount of work needing. And for relief, I'm going to do something Tamiya next time, because Tamiya have a good reputation for well-engineered kits that go together really well without problems and don't leave gaps. Probably a Mitsubishi Zero from Tamiya. I've not done a Japanese aircraft yet. not since I was a boy. So that'll be interesting. But yeah, I'm doing okay with this, I think. Okay, thank you for watching, listening, if you were.
Subscribing.
If you're still with me, subscribing. It's hot. It's a hot day. Not as hot as yesterday, but cheerio. Auf Wiedersehen.